So now that you've set up the basics of your class, let's talk about your class description. This is the part that might be the most foreign for you if you're a classroom teacher or if you've been doing ESL online teaching, because this is part marketing as well. So your class description is what learners see, and parents see especially, once they've clicked on your class that they've already chosen out of this list. So if you've grabbed them with your title, your image, now they're here and they want to learn more. This is where they can learn more. So you can see from Outschool's notes that there's a lot to explain here. You really want to make sure that you're describing in full what they can expect from your class. And remember here that you're not talking to a supervisor or another teacher. You're talking to parents who don't necessarily speak teacher. They might not understand what some of your teaching terms mean. They want to see what their child will experience in your class. So think about it from the child's perspective. If you were talking at back to school night, or if you were describing it from what the child will do and experience and see and feel in your classroom, that's what you want to tell them. So you want to cover what will be taught, what topics you'll cover, the structure of your class, how you will teach, your teaching style, how much learners will get to interact with each other, and any required experience or knowledge learners need. Now, as you might guess, this is a lot of information, and there are people who don't read very well or process a lot of information. So just because you wrote it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to read it and notice it. However, this gives you a leg to stand on too if you get a complaint about your class. The primary reason people get upset in any sales environment is when they think they get something different from what they were promised or what they bought. So if you can be clear in this description, it's much easier for Outschool to defend you from a complaining parent, or for you to defend yourself, or when you get a review from a raving mad parent because they thought that you would teach their child how to add multi-digit numbers at the beginning of Algebra 1, you can point to this and say, I'm so sorry that that wasn't clear in the description to you. Perhaps another class would have been better. And more importantly, parents who do read can scroll up to your description and see that that was a totally unrealistic expectation from that parent, and so they should take that review with a grain of salt. So there's a big box here that you can fill with as much information as you'd like. Outschool does read this. Remember that your class description needs to get approved before it will be listed. So check for things like typos. Check for clarity. Read it out loud to yourself. And think about how you're selling it. So I like to start with a general introduction that tells what the purpose of this class is. It's a little bit more fun. It gives sort of my angle on the class. Okay? I have a note here about scheduling because I'm changing this from 2 times a week for 2 weeks to 1 time a week, 4 weeks. So it's still a multi-day. But right now I have some wonky scheduling where it might not be the same. Again, people may or may not read that, but I really want them to, so it's at the top. Then I outline this is a 4-session class. The same kids meet 4 times. I outline what we do in each lesson. And it's not enough that somebody could necessarily steal from this and just teach my class, but it is definitely enough that a parent could get a sense of what's going to happen and what they could expect their learner to get out of this. I am clear about what I'm teaching. I am clear about what kind of activities we're going to be doing. And then I leave the rest up to the classroom. So it should be just enough to pique their interest and make a clear expectation, but you don't have to create a whole lesson plan here. In fact, parents don't want to read that and they don't understand how to read that. So sum it up, okay? Now, learning goals is an optional section. Because I do know more of the teacherese, I do tend to use this section. This class is a little bit more friendly in terms of this language. It's a little looser, but some of my others have more specific, students will learning goals. So again, if you're an educator, there are some parents who do value that, and there are a lot of parents who are educators, and they might appreciate seeing that kind of language in here as a hint that that's who you are and what you do. If you're not someone who understands what this means or has written lesson planning, this is a totally optional section. You don't have to put anything here. And for sure, if you feel like this is just a fun class and there aren't really specific learning goals, then what we're going to do is clear up here, then you don't need to fill this out at all. Don't worry about it. Homework is optional as well. Now, you can assign homework. It may not get done. And parents are not looking for you to lecture their kid generally on not doing homework. So if you plan to assign homework, make sure it's a reasonable amount. Make sure that what you do in the classroom will help motivate your student to want to get that done, to be prepared for the next class. And make sure you have kind of a backup plan for when they show up without the homework done. That's just kind of the way at the moment and on Outschool, I hear in general. Assessment is also an optional section. Note that in the parent view, this shows up as progress. So they're talking about how they'll know their learner is progressing. And again, it's optional in a one-time class. They might not. I don't usually fill this out, but I did want to point out that this is exactly what playwrights do. So I did put something in there. You also have the option here to recommend, and this was one of my first classes, so I didn't have any choices, but now I can put one in here. You can recommend a next class. So I'm going to recommend a next class here and save it at the bottom. Additional notes are more optional sections. So outside work, you can approximate how many hours, and I really like that 0 to 1 is an option because that signals there's stuff you can do, but nothing is required. Parental guidance, so if there's anything that parents need to be sensitive to, I just like to put in to cover myself that, kids come up with wild ideas, and I'm sorry if your kid doesn't like some other kids, but I'll try to keep it clean. Teacher experience is required for sensitive topics. So if you are interested in teaching something that might fall in the realm of sensitive topic, make sure you click on this blue link and read the information about what's required. Even if you have personal experience, unless you can really demonstrate that you are knowledgeable in training other people on how to process these experiences. So this is for things like that might fall under a therapeutic type setting. Typically, therapy is not permitted on Outschool, but there are social groups that might kind of be in a gray area that you might be permitted to teach, but you really do have to demonstrate that you have training in the field and that you will be able to handle that in an appropriate and safe way for learners. I've definitely seen a lot of notes on Facebook about people being rejected because of a lack of expertise when they have expertise. And the problem is that they haven't clearly explained their expertise. So make sure that you take the time to explain this, both to Outschool and to parents. Okay? Now, materials. You are allowed to use other apps, websites, or services. So some people use things like Kahoot or Nearpod, which are online services that let kids do interactive quizzes or games or things like that. But you don't have to, so you can check one or the other box if you want to. And then the learner supply list is optional. Keep in mind that right now people might not be able to access supplies the same way or as quickly as usual. So make sure that it's a reasonable request. Even with this, you'll have people who register late. You'll have people who don't have the worksheets printed. You'll have people who just aren't quite prepared. So I would also think ahead of, if they don't have the worksheet, what's another way that I could share this material with them or allow them to participate fully in class? If it's a situation where they really, really need it or class isn't going to work, I would make sure that you also put that way up high in your description and then also post a note in the classroom. All right. So for enrolled learners, this part will not appear in your listing, but as soon as the learner enrolled, this would show up in the classroom, so they would have access to this. So there's a default welcome I just take the end and I change it to be more of a question that they might actually answer, because my kids have taken classes and gotten the same message over and over and over again. So I ignore it, and probably most people do too. You can also add a file here, and that means that they will get this worksheet immediately upon enrollment. You do want to be careful, because remember that everybody does have an opportunity to cancel their enrollment for 1 week if they enroll a week or more beforehand, or at least within 24 hours of registering, unless your class starts. So if you post an entire semester's packet here, they could take that and run and get all of their money back. So if there's something that they wouldn't really be able to make much use of, but they need for the first class, this is a great place to put that. But if this is something that is going to put your work and your material at risk, I would hold on to it. You can always shoot it out through a message in the classroom closer to the start of class. So you could do it like within 24 hours of the class starting. So those are the details that people see. I'm going to hit save since I added that recommended next class. And now if I go to view class listing, this is what it looks like to a parent. Okay, so here's out of this world dialogue, writing in 3 genres. Here's the picture. Here's my little summary. It says right here that it's a multi-day course. There's so many ways to show parents what these things mean, and they miss all of them, some of them. Okay, and you can see the reviews for the teacher and for the course. And this is why it's really nice to do that one-time course, because if nobody signs up for your 6-week course, this is just blank. And it just says new to Outschool, and that makes people nervous. So then there's stuff about Outschool, but this bar at the bottom is about your course. How many minutes? What's the class size? What's the age range? What's the price? Underneath is each of the scheduled sections that you have created for this course. So we'll talk about sections in another video and how to add them. But learners enroll in one of these 3 choices. You can drop it down to see all of the meeting times that I've entered here. And then I have the availability feature turned on. If you don't, this would say request an additional time. I have it set using the availability feature so that they can search for a time that would work in my schedule, and they can just create a new section that goes into my schedule automatically, and then I have a learner in it. And then here you can see the class experience is at the top. If you show more, you can read all that stuff that I put in. Okay. Under that comes learning goals, homework, supply list. So it's a different order for the parents than it is for you. External resources. And then this is that progress, that assessment section comes out as progress for parents. Time commitment is automatically calculated by Outschool based on what you put in. And then the parental guidance if it's there. And again, some of these were optional, so if you don't fill them out, they just won't be here. Then comes your profile. So they see you. They can watch your intro video. They can send you a question to see if their learner is a good fit or if you'd be willing to add another time. That comes to your email. They can click here to see your full profile. They can read more about you. Okay, and then at the bottom, they can read reviews from this class. If they go to your profile, they can read reviews from any class. Okay, on the bottom are other classes by you, and also more like this from other people. All right, so that is how you sell the class on Outschool, and how people find classes is through this version. And if you haven't looked at find classes, you have access to that too, and you really should. So you can set your learner ages. I always end up with 18 in here because I took the training class. But if I put my 7-year-old in, I can add a subject area of English. And I can say that I want it to be live, not a flexible course. And I can select a short course is what they call it for parents here. And let's see if we can find my class. So you can see that if I'm a parent of a 7-year-old looking for a writing class, I'm looking through all these options. Oh, look, there's my course. So here's what they see. They can see that it's been reviewed. It's a big deal to be reviewed. They can see the title, they can see my name, and then they can see that short little blurb. They can't see all of the other work that you just did to sell this course. So this is the first part of selling the course, but then once they click on it, everything else becomes important too. Good luck with your first class.